Hi all. So in this video we are going to learn about what is object orientation, right? When we try to learn about this object orientation model, first of the thing that I would like to say that we are discussing this object oriented programming, and we will be using Java language or Java programming to explain the concepts of this object oriented programming model. So I believe that you might be familiar with this part, or else we can go with the exercises and you'll get yourself familiar with how things get represented in Java programming language and how we can use this object orientation in how this object orientation is being embedded in this programming language. So we'll start with that. Well, when we discuss this object oriented programming, the first question that comes to our mind, that what is this object orientation, right? So many things in our life can be represented in the code, as I earlier told. And like, you can represent anything that comes your way, any physical object, any physical thing that you can see, you can represent it as a part of the code, right? However, representing any thing, right, representing anything in the part of code can be done in varieties of ways. Okay, so object oriented programming model, or also known as the OOPS concept, is basically a programming model which is used to model the things or the objects around us and the data associated with them. Okay, so OOPS concept helps is a actually a programming model, right? Because when we have to code something into when we have to represent any object in the form of code, right? So it can be done in various ways. Someone can represent it in this way, someone can do this way, someone can do this way. So basically we introduced a concept called oops concept, and it is a particular design model, okay, of modeling the things actually, right? So when we are modeling the things, we need to model the objects around us, right? We are modeling the objects and the data, right? And this programming model, when we are using this object oriented programming model and we are using this to model our objects and data, it makes our code more reusable. Okay, it makes our code more reusable and also more flexible. That is, it adds flexibility to our code, right? So that maintaining our code, the maintenance plus writing the code becomes easier. Okay, so basically you understand this way that we can represent any object in the form of code. However, the representation can happen in various ways, right? So oops concept or oops model is a basic programming model where we are using the objects and data part. In our code, we are using this model so that as to make our code more reusable, flexible, maintainable, and easier to write and debug. Okay, so these are the basic things. Now let's see what does this include. So we will talk with the example of the tree we already discussed. So let's say we see a physical object tree, okay, and we want to represent this tree in the form of the code, right? So we need to, when we are using this oops model, okay, so a tree is our basic object. So for any object we have certain attributes, like we have this height for this tree, we need to have certain width for this tree, we need to know what are the type of that tree and further certain attributes associated with that tree, right? Also we need to have the behavior or the functionality that for example, for the tree it can grow. Okay, so this grow can be a particular behavior for a particular tree. Further, there could be something more for any tree, right? So these are the particular functionalities that we can have for the tree. And now if we combine this attributes and behavior for a particular object, okay, into a single package, right? We tell it as a class. Okay, and this class name would be tree. right? So for this class we can have certain objects. There could be many objects, there could be many trees with different height, with different widths, with different types, and different the behavior would be different for different trees, right? So but the basic blueprint will remain the same. Okay, so this is the way we can represent data in OPS. Sorry, the data and objects in OPS. Okay, so we could say it is organized around a tree object, rather mentioning all these things separately and mentioning this behavior separately. We just combine all together into a single package known as the class, and then we can represent various types of tree as objects of this particular class. So this is the basic underlying structure of the object oriented programming model. However, there are for the more things that we will be discussing in this course. For example, the four pillars. Okay, you can say the four pillars or the four important features of OPS. And those are what? First, the very first we discussed earlier, and very important part, that is the abstraction. Okay, then we have the inheritance, of course, that will help us to make the design model for our system. And then we have an important property called encapsulation. And further, we have one more important property called polymorphism. So we will see examples of how these uh, pillars are the basic pillars of the OPS concept, how they are used in programming. And we will use this principle in our custom programs, and how the Java source code uses all these four concepts. Okay, so these four concepts are very, very important for the Java: the abstraction, encapsulation, polymorphism, and inheritance. Okay. Now, I already discussed one concept called class. So basically, as we told, that class will represent that object, but it won't represent a specific object. Rather, it will be a blueprint for that object, right? So class is the basic blueprint on which we can have the objects differently with different values. For example, if we consider this tree class, okay, this is a tree class with certain attributes and certain behavior. So for this tree class we can have certain tree objects which could have the different values for all these attributes, or different behavior for this particular behavior, like different functionality included in this behavior. So however, the basic structure will remain the same. Okay, so this can be the blueprint on the basis of which we can have different objects, right? So this way we represent the class as a blueprint. So we can have model any physical object in the code with the help of classes. And classes in Java gives us the flexibility to represent the physical objects in a code via the blueprint. Okay, blueprint will contain certain set of attributes and a certain set of behavior. However, it is not mandatory that every class will have these attributes and behavior. A class could be empty as well. Okay, and this tree class we will be using as an example to show how we could model any physical object into a particular class, and we could create objects based on that, right? So this what we are going to discuss in the upcoming programming part. We will use the code editor, Spring Tool Suite, for our coding purpose. So you can download that software and practice along with, so that you could have an idea of the entire picture of this object oriented programming model, right? And okay, then keep watching. We will discuss more about this in the upcoming video. And thank you very much for watching. Thanks.